Infinity Pool is set in a fictional country that offers a peculiar alternative to capital punishment. Brandon Cronenberg returns after Possessor with another intense science fiction thriller that's sure to give us plenty to talk about. Welcome everyone to the Atomic Cinema Experiment. I am Peter, and joining me for the first time ever is David.
I come in peace.
I don't believe you.
You're right, I'm a very warlike species.
Yeah, this is a science fiction movie podcast, and we get together and we talk about sci-fi movie. It's quite that simple. And in this episode, David's first joining the show, replacing Tara, who we send on our farewell Viking funeral out to sea, where we'll set fire to the boat. She was definitely dead first, we checked. But we are here today to talk about Infinity Pool, because I thought, it's David's first episode. He should have a light-hearted, fun romp with, straightforward story, nothing too extreme to sink his teeth into yet.
There was a point in this movie where I thought, I'm going to make a pun, and I'm going to say, wow, Infinity Pool, really throwing me in on the deep end here, Pete.
I mean, it's only a pun because it happens to have a pool-related title. The fact is, you could have said that if it was named anything else, and it would have made sense. So,
oh yeah, for sure. But it just has that extra little kick.
It's a justifiable pun, as we say in the pun business. So, yes, we'll start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. Brandon Cronenberg had another sci-fi movie that me and Tara did a couple of years ago called Possessor, and that was a very interesting film. It was very cerebral, and it was very much I think we watched the uncut version at the time, so it was like NC-17. It was like very extreme in its graphic and violence and all that stuff. And lo and behold, this is another movie he's made where there's an uncut version, and even the cut version, if you will, the R-rated version, is still pretty extreme. Like there's so it's obviously it's not for kiddies. It is a movie for adults with adult themes and a lot of things going on, but I went in as blind as I possibly could. I just sort of trusted, because I liked the director's previous film, just to go in and just discover what it was, to the point where I did not know what the science fiction element was coming into this.
All right. I mean, for me, I did pretty much the same, but I was trying my hardest to pitch this to my girlfriend of, hey, let's watch this together. That was a mistake, mind you. But
did she make it to the end? Did she watch all of it?
No, she did not.
Okay.
But I managed to sell her at least giving it a shot on Alexander Skarsgård, because she's got a major hotness for him. So got there, but we watched the trailer just so much to see the inciting incident, and then I said, well, that's enough. Let's turn it off and not spoil the rest of the movie.
That's fair. We will start spoiler-free, of course, as we always do. And I suspect for this one, so much of it, I think, is spoilery that we probably won't do too much discussion before that point.
Yeah, it's going to be like basic character descriptions, and that's about it.
Yeah, basic character stuff, general feelings, and then we'll get into spoilers after that. Also, before we get into it, there's going to be a little bonus segment at the end of the show for the foreseeable future, because David, of course, is new to the Ace, and his science fiction movie watching is not as robust as myself, or indeed Tara's was by the time she was done with the show. So basically, David is going to go back, and for each episode he's going to do some homework and watch one of the movies that we've already done in the show on the Ace that he's not seen before. And at the end of the show, I'll just ask for his quick thoughts, and he'll spend a couple of minutes just sort of giving a general spoiler-free quick review on something that he hadn't seen. But the idea being is that when we get to countdowns and we get to things in the future, is that David will be caught up in, like, because let's say we do top 70s movies again. The idea being that David, by that point, will have maybe watched most of the 70s movies that me and Tara did before. So
I'll somehow be able to speak intelligently about whatever it is I'm saying.
So we actually decided that we're going to do a countdown in the summer next year. We're going to do a top 80s sci-fi list. So you'll find that David's probably going to focus on movies from the 80s in the Ace back catalogue. But he's got his first one ready, so we'll do that at the end of the show. That'll be like after we rate this movie, we'll we'll dip in, and that'll be a regular feature for quite some, possibly 200 episodes, because me and Tara did 200 episodes or so. So,
wishful thinking, but we'll see how far we get.
I have complete faith. And also, if you don't know, David, he's new to the Ace, but he's not new to doing movie reviews. We have a show called The Collector's Cut, where we work through franchises and like director filmographies and things like that. It's Christmas season at the time of posting this, so we're working through the Home Alone franchise over on that show. So it's on the same YouTube channel, or of course, if you listen to the audio feed, you can just go search for The Collector's Cut on your podcast app of choice and find it that way. But we've got like 60 episodes of that in the back catalogue now, so go check that out. So
you have your own homework to do.
Yeah, not me. I was there for all of both of these shows.
Yes, the audience has to do that. For anyone who hasn't been sticking around with me, you get to see my horrible, awful, no good opinions on Fight Club.
Most people will agree with you in Fight Club, though. I'm the one with the weird opinion on Fight Club.
That's why I'm directing them to that one.
Okay. You want them to like you. I see. I see. That's okay. I'll be the villain. So, anyway, yeah, Infinity Pool is what we're talking about. So,
yes,
this is a psychological science fiction film. It's got some horror elements. It's intense, and it is about a couple who are on vacation in a fictional country called Latolka. I had to double check what that was because, it's fictional. I'd literally never heard of it before this movie.
Yeah.
So they're there at this tourism resort, this sort of compound with a hotel and a pool and some restaurants, things like that. But this country has some pretty extreme rules and some pretty extreme punishments for crimes, shall we say.
Yeah.
So the movie's kind of about our main characters getting mixed up in that, and it leads down a path which starts exploring some very, very sort of big ideas and big topics. It's got the two leads are Alexander Skarsgård, who is this writer who's basically written one book and is suffering from, I don't even know if we could say it's writer's block per se. It feels like he's given up almost entirely.
It's a writer's labyrinth.
Yes.
A block implies that he's just about to get over it. This is something that's been going on for years.
This is a writer who forgot how to spell,
yes.
I guess. And then we have his wife in the film, M, played by Cleopatra Coleman. But then the other big main character is Mia Goth's character, Gabby Bauer. So that's very much our main set of characters. There's some supporting cast as well, but that's the main characters that we're going to be dealing with. Yeah. And so it's very much a character study of a film. It's very open to interpretation, I think, especially the ending. This is one of these movies where we're going to talk about what's literally happening and what it actually means, and what parts of it might be literal and which parts might not be literal. So we'll be getting into all that stuff, more so in the spoiler topics. But this is a good place to ask the question, David. What did you think of Infinity Pool?
I don't have a lot of experience with Cronenberg, either senior or junior here, but I liked it. I think it was it's less of a plot-based movie, in my opinion. There is obviously a through line, but it's more focused on the building of this feeling, this atmosphere of just sheer dread and terror over the course of it, where you never know what's going to be happening next. And I really roped me in the whole way through. It was a very atmospheric movie. I think if I had any little minor critique about it, it would be the fact of it kind of doesn't feel like the sci-fi element is really necessary towards what it's doing. Like, obviously it is for the larger themes, but in terms of the plot, it never really justifies its own existence in a lot of ways. And obviously I can't really share what it is without spoiling anything, but it's so strange to me how it comes out of nowhere and it doesn't really play that big of a part in things, all things considered.
You'll have to debate that with me, I think, once we get into it.
Fair enough.
Not that I feel strongly in the opposite. I'm just not so sure I came out feeling like that either. So
it's a very minor thing. It's not something that's like ruining the movie for me or anything. It's just something that I was thinking about during, because I kept expecting it to be something more. I kept expecting them to explore it more than they did.
It's very much a case of the sci-fi element is used to tell the story with the characters. It's not really that interested in exploring the sci-fi element itself, if that makes sense. But still very much important in actually, provoking these characters with the situations that they find themselves in. Yeah, I mean, I obviously saw Brandon Cronenberg's previous film. I've seen a reasonable number of David Cronenberg's films. I think when I saw Possessor, one of my key talking points was that this must be the best case example of like a famous person, like an artist of some kind, their offspring growing up to do a similar type of thing as their parent and kind of smashing it in a way where it feels like, yeah, you're kind of on par. In fact, arguably you might even be better in some ways, and that's kind of wild because you think of any other famous a kid of someone else who was, Will Smith's kids, or
I was literally about to say Jaden Smith.
Yeah, like it's so rare that the kid ends up having, like, I'm not saying they've all been failures or anything like that. There's obviously been other success stories. There's famous parent kid kind of pairings throughout Hollywood, whether it be actors or whatever. But I think with this, I think what stuns me is that he's doing a very similar thing in that he's doing very provocative themes. He's tackling sexual ideas. He's tackling deeply psychological ideas. But at the same time, I do think there's a distinct feeling that's different from his father's work. And his father even had a film out last year called Crimes of the Future, and that felt very David Cronenberg. And I watched this and I saw Possessor and I went, okay, I can feel a link to Daddy Cronenberg, but this feels like it's doing his own brand of Cronenberg. So, in a weird, he's having his cake and he's eating it too. He's kind of like almost cashing in on the expectations that the name Cronenberg gives people, but he's kind of carving out his own kind of flavor of it in a way that I don't think anyone's watching either this or Possessor and going, oh, he's just doing his dad shtick, because it doesn't feel that at all.
Right. It reminds me of the same sort of thing of Mel Brooks and Max Brooks, where Max Brooks does a whole lot more of like writing stuff compared to his father doing film, but it's that using the name to get your foot in the door, but then still being able to prove yourself as having something to really say. You really do have your own style to it.
Yeah, and hell, we got a Skarsgård in this. He's one of many. I mean, I think they're all related. I mean, I don't actually know.
But... I've triple checked on this because I simply cannot believe that many super famous people managed to come out of like 2 generations.
Yeah, are they all Stellan's sons?
I believe so.
Yeah, okay.
He has like 8 children, I think.
Jeez, all right. Good to know. And honestly, Alexander Skarsgård out of the sons might be the one I like the most.
I'd agree, but it's also the one I have the most exposure to. I think Bill Skarsgård, obviously the It movies, but yeah, I've seen Alexander around more often.
I think Bill Skarsgård, like, I think he's fine in some things, but I do think his Pennywise and also his villain in John Wick 4, like, they left kind of you're a bit hammy. Like, yeah. I'm not saying that Alexander's always been great. He was in True Blood after all, right? Not everyone has a perfect career, but he's been good on enough things at this point that he probably comes out on top. But none of them are getting universal praise from me. Let me make that clear.
That's fair.
So yeah, you got him. You got Mia Goth, who's becoming something of a sort of indie darling scream queen in a weird way, because this movie is somewhat of a horror movie, although we're doing it on the sci-fi show because it is very much science fiction, and I think the way it brings up its ideas and talks about them feels a bit more sci-fi skewing to me, even though it is very intense and does have some horrific ideas sort of sprinkled in there. Mia Goth was in X. She kind of like, not the same character, but she was also in Pearl, which was connected to it, and then she's coming back for a 3rd movie in that series, Maxine, coming up in the next year or two. So she's kind of building her indie cult status as an actor over these past few years. So
yeah, she has a very, I mean, it's very easy to point out to either very thin or non-existent eyebrows, and it just gives her this different look from like any other female actress you're seeing in Hollywood nowadays.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, I don't think I realized she was English, because she's done various American accents, and those other movies that I've seen her in.
Honestly, I couldn't have told you if this was an accent or not in terms of natural.
It sounds like, I mean, it's a very good accent. It might not be exactly her natural accent. You know, this could be her, you know, putting it on a bit more extreme or going with a slightly different dialect. But, you know, if it sounded pretty authentic. Like, there was... It's almost like this weird thing when it comes to accents like that, where it's sounding... What's the best way of putting this? There's certain words that come out sounding kind of weird, but that almost just lets you know it's more authentic, because it's like, it's not someone doing this perfect what they think that accent is the whole time. It's someone who actually is kind of slipping sort of naturally a little bit at times.
Well, I've got her childhood history here on Wikipedia. It's actually incredible that she has any sort of accent. So when she was a few weeks old, she moved to Brazil because her mother is Brazilian.
Okay.
When she was 5, she moved back to the UK. And then when she was 10, she moved to Canada. So she's been all around the world.
I mean, I guess it makes sense. 5 to 10 for developing your accent sounds like a very influential... But then again, you're starting to learn to talk before that, so maybe that would just lead you to
So
Brazilian.
maybe this is what a British-Brazilian accent sounds like.
Yeah, maybe that's why there's a little bit of weirdness to it, is because there's a bit of a mixed-in quality to it. But or maybe that's just made it very easy for her to slip around accents, because she's grown up with so many that she's just kind of able to dance around them very easily. But yeah, so no, I mean, I like the movie. I never really got around to saying that, but
good.
It's like I say, it's very cerebral. I don't know if I like it quite as much as Possessor based on initial viewing, and I've only seen both once, so I'd have to maybe watch them again and compare and all that. But I think from the get-go, it's very well directed. It draws you in. You know, it starts off a little artsy with some sort of over-the-top shots just to kind of pull you into the movie, and then it sets up what it's doing. It gets you into the head of the character. It gets you into the head of like his temptations, what's appealing to him in the moment, and things like that. And then kind of starts to flip things on its head with a sci-fi concept and makes you feel mixed about it, because, and intentionally so, it's like, this is a very weird circumstance to be feeling something about. And then, so, and then I think it very neatly transitions into like being a very analytical film where you're thinking about, okay, what is this saying about people in society and all these kind of things.
Oh yeah, no, obviously we can't get too much into it, but just everyone at this resort is obviously very wealthy in their own ways. And it has a lot to say about wealthy people in society by the time the movie is done.
Yeah, although notably, James, our main character, Skarsgård's character, who I'll just refer to as James from now on, he is only wealthy by marriage. He's actually poor in terms of his history, but he just happens to have married into wealth. Right. So he's kind of this slightly different character, or at least has a different perspective on the wealth in a way that maybe makes him feel like he might be an outsider of a sort. So that's something to keep in mind as we go through it as well. But yeah, but everything about it is very hypnotic at times. It's the music is very kind of suggestive without ever being there's not like those big main themes that you remember coming out of it. It's more textual. It's all these kind of things.
There's a lot of sequences where it feels just more trying to put you into a trance sort of thing, getting you to feel this emotional feeling rather than, no, let's focus on the main theme for these, motifs or whatever.
Yeah. So, honestly, I don't know how much more I've got to say other than just, I think the performances from the leads are all very good. Yeah.
The only other person that jumped out at me, because he only pops up once we get to the reveal of what makes this sci-fi, but the detective character,
Thresh,
yes, played by Thomas Kretschmann. He's been in a lot of stuff.
I recognize his face, actually. What's he been in?
You would know him because he's in the Resident Evil Apocalypse movie, which I know you enjoy. There's a bunch of other stuff he's in. Wanted, that 2008 assassin movie. Dracula 3D.
You've not said anything good yet. You've said nothing but bad movies so far.
I'm just looking at things that I think you would have seen. He was in TV show Westworld as Gerald. I can't remember his character exactly.
Maybe I remember him from that.
He was one we both saw. He was Colonel Weber in Dial of Destiny, Indiana Jones. Again, can't remember him.
Oh, Yeah, okay. I think I'm getting a hazy.
Regardless, I only bring him up because I think he was introduced in this movie slightly later than other.
He was the scientist on the train,
right?
And Indiana Jones.
His other big things here I just saw was Baron von Strucker from the Marvel Cinematic Universe.
Yeah. I remember that now. Yeah.
But no, I think that he was a late introduction into the cast here, but I think he's super interesting as a character, especially the way they play him, because obviously, without getting too much into it, he takes advantage of these wealthy people while also still representing this country of Litoka. And it's just this strange little line that I think he manages to play very well.
Yeah. He's a very intriguing character when he shows up, because like you really have no idea where it's going, and everyone's very scared in the moment, and it's like, what's he going to do? And then obviously he sets us down the path of what the movie's going to be because of what he introduces. So there's a lot there to sort of take from that character. So he's inherently, and this is not to just like say the actor didn't do a good job. He did, but like you almost like half the job's already done, which is how interesting that character is in terms of what he's introducing to the film. Anyway, so I guess we'll give the spoiler warning for Infinity Pool from this point on. We'll get into it. And oh, David, have you ever been aroused at the thought of killing a clone of yourself? Has that ever been something you've enjoyed?
I mean, that's literally every day of my life. Wake up, roll out of bed, say, boy, if only I could just beat the ever-loving piss out of myself and then just watch it happen.
Yeah, okay, so just to talk about the broad concept of what's happening in this country before we get into the character specifics, is that everything here is very illegal, right? Everything here is punishable by death, basically. Obviously, in the movie, it's accidental murder that spurns this, but it sounds like a lot of other things will get the death penalty as well.
Isn't that a sequence from like Parks and Rec or something, where it's like every single little thing you could do, it's like, you do this, death, you do that, death, this thing, believe it or not, death.
Sounds familiar. Sounds familiar. But they introduce this idea that they've got this rule because the tourism is so good here, right? And they make a lot of money off tourists. And it's been hinted at various points in the movie that outside the compound, which has got this big barbed wire, like, you know, security guarded gate, you don't leave the compound because there's a lot of crime here because it's a very poor country, except all the tourists that come in and spend a lot of money. And apparently they've got a law to try and protect the tourists who get up to something bad while they're here, is that if they can pay for it, they'll make a duplicate. And the duplicate, by law, has to have the memories of the original person. But the duplicate can be killed in your place. So we get this entire thing that's introduced, which is he witnesses a clone of himself be killed by the son of the person he accidentally ran over. And his reaction is a little interesting because he kind of smiles. It's just like he enjoyed it a little bit. But it basically gets us to this idea that Mia Goth's character Gabby and all of her friends that she's there with, and when I say friends, you know, she's actually the youngest one. A lot of them, they're more like middle-aged to upper middle-aged kind of couples and things like that. But they are basically there, and they've all somehow stumbled into this situation before. One particular incident got a lot of them executed, but they all got cloned and watched their clones die. And it's basically this play on the idea that if you take away the consequences for your actions, who would you become? And these people are all they're going into the deep end of like what they'll do now because they know they can just pay to get away with anything by having a clone killed instead.
Boy, look at that social commentary.
I mean, obviously this neatly feeds into the idea that every time you do something bad, you're killing a little part of your soul. In this case, it's literal, you're killing another version of yourself. We'll talk about all that. I saw one quote online that said it's basically a high art version of The Purge, that they can come here and get all this out their system and go back to their normal life.
It kept reminding me of some movie, and I kept coming back to The Purge over and over again, but I felt like there was some other thing I was forgetting. I mean, but yeah, it is basically just Purge.
But they're nothing alike in terms of plot, in terms of how the movie plays out. It's just one conceptual idea with the characters that you can kind of link between them.
It is the core criticism of I mean, not every Purge movie obviously deals with this, but this idea of you've got this rich and powerful wealthy class who is just without consequence and able to do whatever they feel like to because they can just pay their way out of it. And obviously there's a lot of real world in that. There is a lot of real world in that.
Yep.
And it's obviously the criticism is the thing that strings those two movies together. So, I mean, I really liked it. I think it did a great job of analyzing it. What I was saying at the beginning, though, is that because it's more focused on this idea of the social commentary of being able to just buy your way out of consequences, the ideas that having a clone of yourself can really bring up, I don't think are really explored much at all. They have one or two throwaway lines of like, oh, are you sure they killed the right one? But it's not really delved into as much as the idea of the lack of consequences and what that does to you instead.
Yeah, I don't really think that's a critique, though. I think that's just acknowledging what the movie was about and what it was focusing on. Like, you know, clearly this movie was not interested in doing the sci-fi side of, like, okay, cloning exists, what's all the implications of that? This movie is more about saying, okay, we're going to use that to provoke how a person looks at themselves, and ultimately, eventually, you know, Skarsgård is going to come up against a clone of himself. He's going to literally have to kill himself and be born again, if you will, or kill the good part of himself, if you want to put it that way. You know, I mean, you could probably phrase it 100 different ways.
Oh, yeah.
But it's more interested in exploring that kind of thing. Because, you know, to get into the character, go back to the start of the movie now and work through it now that we've sort of got the basic overall concept established.
Right.
Is, you know, the movie opens, and it opens on black. It's just a dark screen, and we hear just some mumbled. I actually turned on the subtitles because I couldn't hear the goddamn thing that they were saying, and it's not a surprise that I didn't understand it because it was such a weird phrase. He says something like, how was it? You can't ingest the white worm brain, or there was something like that. It was
right.
like,
it was some complete nonsense phrase, but yeah, I have subtitles on by default just because, you know, I've got a busy house. There's things running around. But I thought something was wrong with my TV because it is a solid like 2 minutes of just nothing on screen. It's just people talking in a dark room.
No, I mean, I got what it was doing, the quiet opening. It was doing this kind of... It sets up this idea that James and his wife are not in a great place, right? Things are kind of awkward. They're kind of... You know, because we hear him kind of try to initiate sex, and she's like, nah, let's just go get breakfast, and kind of... You know, rejects is maybe a strong word, but kind of shuts down the attempt to initiating sex. And then the curtains open, you finally see them, and it's like they're sitting at breakfast, they're talking about what to do for the day. And it's very stilted, it's very much, there's not a lot of chemistry here. It feels like they don't want to do the same thing. And not only that, it feels like he especially is not committing to anything she's saying, hey, we should try this, we should do that. He's very detached. And it's setting up this character who is maybe a little dead inside, and why maybe some of the extreme pleasures that are, you know, dangled in front of him in this movie are going to be appealing. But it sets all that stuff up, and that's not to gloss over all the crazy camera shots when they're coming out of the hotel, and there's like all these like upside down shots, and
it is so just... It almost made me sick for a minute there because I was trying to follow along with it. I was like tilting my head, and I was like, nope, not good.
Yeah, and there's a little bit as well just before they start talking where it's like the concierge or whoever it is at the hotels announcing some stuff that's coming up festival-wise, and there's a bunch of employees wearing these masks that are very horrific looking. They're very sort of monstrous in various ways.
Yeah.
And obviously these come up later, and again, the idea here is that when all of the people who they only do this in one scene, but they refer to themselves as zombies. This idea that they've seen themselves die and they're still alive, so let's kind of a play on that word. But it's this idea that this is their zombie face. This is, or arguably, it's their true self. You know, this is who they really are, as these awful people, kind of thing.
The person below the mask is not the real thing. It's the mask that's taken over.
It's kind of like Batman, but much less nice.
Yes.
But it's, but I'm bringing it up now because obviously they introduced the masks here. They sort of make it a point of saying, hey, this is like a cultural thing here, is these weird masks. But, you know, it sets up all these characters, and the wife ends up going away herself for the day, and James is just on his own sauntering around the hotel, and he bumps into Gabby, played by Mia Goth, and she's immediately kind of, you get flirty vibes from her. She's very sort of in awe of him. Notably, I think they bump into each other when there's like a sort of, not a ritual, but there's like police chasing like some guy who's trying to protest the tourists or something.
Yeah, there's a local who's just dirt biking around on the beach, kicking up sand in protest of the tourists. Quite literally, James and Gabby and their ilk, because they are ruining the island, more or less.
Yeah. And she's like, oh, hey, I read your book. And this is actually where we find out he's a writer. We didn't know that until she says that. And he's like, oh, really? You read my book? And you get the impression that it didn't do very well. Not a lot of people read it, so he's...
Really? You read my book? No one read my book.
Wait, you're an attractive young woman who's smiling at me, and you're saying you like my book? Oh.
By the way, this is a fake wedding ring. Let me throw this away real quick.
Oh, I think it's very clear as this movie goes on that she does not care that he's married.
No, not at all.
So, but the wife is back later that day, and it's actually kind of a little funny, ironic cut, because when they were talking earlier at breakfast, the wife said, hey, why don't we try the Chinese restaurant this year? And he just kind of shuts it down. He doesn't want to do it. And then he's talking to Gabby here, and she's like, hey, why don't you come with me and my friend for dinner tonight at the Chinese place? And it cuts when he's about to make his decision to them all sitting at the Chinese restaurant.
Yeah.
And it's just kind of like, you shot down that idea when your wife said it, but you were gung-ho when this woman said it. This is interesting.
My wife didn't read my book.
I mean, I assume she did, but she must have.
I mean, she may have read the back, maybe the first few chapters.
Maybe she pretended to read it, but she definitely put in the effort to make the illusion that she had read it. Which is interesting, though, because later on in the movie, when Gabby says that she never read his book, she's like, I was lying about that, you idiot. It's like, what, so not once in the several days by that point in the movie that you've been hanging out and whatnot, you never asked a single question about what she thought of anything in the book to reveal that she didn't know anything about it?
He didn't want to ruin the illusion. He didn't want to ask her, like, what did you like about it? And she said, like, oh, I really like this interpretation that's clearly wrong. And he's like, oh, you didn't get any of my deeper meanings.
I think it's a serious point to bring up, because I think it's showing just how, like, up his own ass he is. He never even questions it. He just accepts it as fact. As soon as she says, I'm a fan of your work, I loved your book, he's just happy to reap the rewards. He hasn't even stopped to think that has to be bullshit.
Yeah.
So, which I guess ties into his character, because he's this character who, as is pointed out soon, he married into wealth, he's not actually rich, and he's not written anything in 6 years, so he's just living off his rich wife.
And then not only that, the father-in-law is actually, like, at least in the way I understood it, he was the one who actually published the book. So it wasn't even like he went out and got it published. It was just nepotism that got him there.
Yeah, and his father-in-law hates him, maybe because his book flopped.
Yeah, it cost me $100,000, kid.
But it's almost like he's, got into this life. He's snuck into it when he's not supposed to be here, but still has these delusions of grandeur in a weird way. Not in a way that he's outwardly an asshole to everyone and acts like he deserves to be treated better than everyone else, but that deep down he thinks he should, and when he's offered that appreciation, he takes it without even thinking about it. He just... Yeah,
it's the ego. He wants to have this inflated ego. He wants to be seen as bigger than he is.
I love that you brought up the word ego, because when I was doing a quick search to see what people were saying about this movie, one of the first sort of analysis things that popped up was the idea that he represents the ego and that Gabby represents the id, and that the wife is therefore the superego.
All right, I can see it.
Which has given me flashbacks of talking about Stalker, which is a movie that we'll do on the Ace one day, but I've talked about it before with Connor, and it's a movie where the three characters very much represent those three things. Not that I'm claiming to be some sort of psychology major who, can actually dissect those three things properly. But I kind of get it. In layman's terms, I get it.
I was going to say, there's the actual diving into it, and then there's critique on the internet levels, and I think we can speak at that level.
Yes. We can acknowledge that it's doing something with those ideas, and certainly the idea that Gabby's the id, and the id's obviously the part of the brain that wants things, and all she is this,
the immediate emotional gratification.
So yeah, they're together. They're getting on. The small talk for the most part is kind of awkward.
It's extremely awkward, but especially because they bring up the point of, hey, when's your next book coming out? And he has to explain, oh, I'm a fraud. I suck at what I do. But one of my favorite parts that really just took me for a loop here is Gabby explaining what her job is. And I don't even know if she's telling the truth, as we find out later, but I appreciate the fact she put on the act of her job is essentially being the person in the infomercial who fails at using the product like before the new solution comes in.
Yeah, so the example she gives at the table, she tries to cut a roll and she just keeps slipping with a knife. So I can't do it. It's just so hard.
It's impossible. Who could cut a roll with a knife? I need the new super cutter.
Yeah. But even this like is a foreshadowing, because what she's doing here is she's playing up this product. So if you think of James himself as the product, as the thing she's there to help sell, she's downplaying the thing that the thing you could have instead, and saying no, you need this better thing. So it is actually kind of foreshadowing her abilities of deception, I guess, amongst other things. So
showing how the old thing just will not work anymore. You need the new thing to come in.
So I think that's part of the reason why it's such a good, dense movie, is that like every scene it's giving you something that even if you don't know why it's important yet, like everything is giving you something about a character, about the themes, or whatever it is, and that's why it is a very fulfilling film, regardless of maybe your taste in like maybe you don't like this as certain other types of science fiction or whatever, but you can't necessarily just say, oh, it's just a dumb movie that's just being perverse for the sake of it. Like there's definitely smart things going on constantly. So anyway, the next day, apparently Gabby and her and I guess he's her husband, but they never really get into it too much.
Yeah, I mean at the very least they are in a relationship, whether that be engaged, husband, just dating. They are together.
It's a Swiss man named Albin, who again, he's a bit of a sweet talker. He keeps very soft accent. He keeps being very pleasant with everyone. But they've apparently roped in our main couple to go outside the gate the next day, and this is something that the wife is kind of like, I don't know. Like they tell us to not leave the compound. It's very dangerous out there, and James is like, well, we came here for inspiration for me to write. Like maybe an experience, or maybe a little mugging would do us some good.
I mean, Em literally shuts down everything, just being like, I know it's because they are literally your fan club, and you just want to hang out with them more. We don't have to pretend it's this whole other thing.
And to be fair, he doesn't deny that. Like she says, this is your fan club, and he's like, well, they had to exist somewhere. Here we are. Let's go and hang out. So. Yep. They rent a car from a guard, kind of, on the lowdown. They're not meant to be doing this, and they drive out to this beach somewhere that these two know about, and they just hang out and drink and barbecue and whatever. But there's a very specific moment early on where James looks over and Mia Goth's character Gabby is just sitting there, and it's almost like is she looking at him through the sunglasses? You can't quite tell, but it's very seductive. It's almost like he's the temptations kind of spring, even it's kind of this unspoken thing. It's not like he's actually going to try anything or make a move or anything, but the idea is that even before she does make a move in a minute, I think he's already like attracted to her. He already wants her. He's already like feeling like his ego is pumped up because this young attractive woman is praising him, is complimenting him, and then on top of that it's Mia Goth, so he's very happy, right? So all this is very, and it all sort of, I won't quite say culminates, although there's definitely a culmination in the scene I'm about to bring up. He goes for a piss. James goes to piss, somewhere behind some bushes or whatever. And when he's done, Gabby just kind of sneaks up behind him and does the old reach around and just starts jerking him off, and it's very much close-ups on both their faces at various points, and there's enough motion you can tell exactly what she's doing, and it's all very kind of like spur of the moment, intimate. You can tell that he's like excited, but obviously it's a very kind of confused thing. And then the movie, just to shock you into reality, does some quick shots of the penis, right? It just goes in for some close-ups. Well, I got that. Did you get that?
I was gonna say this is a difference with the uncut version.
Oh.
I watched the R-rated version, and we did not get the penis.
What did you get instead? Did it cut to something else, or did it just?
We got a bunch of shots of his face and being reacting to that. More shots of Gabby doing the motion, and then we got the result of her action dripping onto the ground.
Oh yeah. The dripping was so. Because I know there's some alternate shots between the different cuts. It's not necessarily, it's just gone. Like, you know, the timing still kept because they put in something else instead. It's probably just another close-up of some faces. But
probably, yeah.
In this case. If you didn't get that, then there's at least something I know you didn't get later on. And
I'm sure. I know exactly what scene you're talking about.
I'm excited to talk about that now. It's worth mentioning the close-up on the penis in the uncut version, like, I mean, for one thing, it's anyone's penis. It could be, like, it's not necessarily the actors because it's this tight close-up. But it did, like, because I wasn't sure which version I was watching, and then I saw like this and like some stuff coming out, and I went, I must be watching the uncut. There's no way that's in the R-rated cut. This is far too graphic. Oh dear. I
love your describe because I didn't know what the differences were, and I looked into trivia about how the distribution company fought to get it from an NC-17 to an R rating. And I was like, well, how much really could have been added if they thought they could have gotten an R rating? And you're telling me that's in there? Good luck, guys.
Yeah. The shot of it dripping on like the leaves in the bottom, though, like on the ground, is just like it's this thing where it's like far more like. It's far more in your face and visual than most movies will ever show this, but at the same time, it still kind of felt artistic because it was slow motion hitting the leaves.
It was slow motion, wow.
Yeah. Well, you got the dripping out of the leaves, did you not?
Yeah, but it was like normal speed. They didn't slow it down or anything.
Maybe it wasn't slow motion. Maybe it was in my head. Time slowed down as it was hitting.
You just really wanted to stay in that shot as long as possible, huh, Pete?
Well, no, but I think what's so interesting about this scene is that she never says anything to him. She never says a word. He never says anything back, and she just goes away after she's done it. And I think because the movie opened with him trying to start sex with his wife, and his wife just kind of, not even saying no, just kind of like, oh, let's go get breakfast. Like, she's almost just ignored him and like continued
just the
on.
Redirection.
Yeah. This idea that she immediately came in and without even prompting satisfied that need instantly to be this, like, why he's more tempted by her than his wife. As the movie goes on, like, you totally get it, and the idea obviously is introduced later that she's just straight up manipulating him the whole time. It's like this feels like, what's a way to get a man obsessed with you? Well, this probably would do it for most.
It keeps coming back to the idea of immediate gratification of whatever it is you want. And while she clearly by the end of the movie, I don't think was really gratifying her own needs in that moment. It's not like she wanted to do that, but she's showing him how good it can feel to just do whatever you want like that.
Yeah, I'm conflicted, honestly, as to whether, like, what her desires are for, like, most... I mean, obviously, I know they change at one point, but I'm not convinced it was just this master plan to get to that point beforehand, or it was like, no, she enjoyed every part of this process. Like, all of it was part of the fun.
I think she enjoyed watching him change, but I don't think she had any real attraction to him as a person.
We'll talk about it when we get to the end, because it's like, because I think there's some.
All right, fair enough.
Yeah, I think it's more complicated than that. I guess is what I'm saying.
This whole movie's more complicated than that, but yes, I get what you're saying.
Yeah, so they're driving back, and what's his face? Albin says he's too drunk, so James offers to drive, and the rest all pretty much go to sleep, and he's driving, but the headlights are sort of flickering in and out, and he ends up hitting someone.
So the headlights thing. That's based off of what later characters say, that was just happening. That wasn't even like a planned thing. That wasn't anything that anyone was trying to mess him with. They just weren't working properly, right?
Yeah. Even though they wanted to get him in trouble, so you'd have to go through the doubling process where they create the clone to be executed. That wasn't what their plan was. Like, she points out later, like, oh, you're just so much of a screw up that you got someone killed by accident, and that's not what we were building up to at all. So, because well, that's the thing, they make it clear beforehand, or later at least, that you don't need to murder someone here to get a death sentence. There's other things you can do. that will get a death sentence. But he hits this guy, and one of the things that really stuck out from Possessor was the way Brandon Cronenberg shoots violence and like the prosthetics and the makeup. It's actually kind of disturbing violence. He makes violence feel scary because you're so used to in movies, action movies, people been blown up or limbs blown off.
You get the squibs and then they go, and then just like fall down.
Horror movies, you're used to stabbings and all kinds of things. But the way he does it, right? I can watch something that's like ultra like drawn out and brutal, like a Terrifier movie. But then I watch this, and there's just something about the way like you get a quick shot of this like this victim's face that's been hit with the car, and his head's kind of caved in, and it feels genuinely disturbing. Like, oh no, I feel the horror of what he's just done and why he's so scared now. I feel like Brandon Cronenberg is one of the best I've seen as a director of actually making violence feel as horrific as it should actually feel. Because movies are very good at desensitizing to all that stuff.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
So, yeah, it's all good stuff. But they go back to the hotel. They beg to get back in, and they're let in. And it's the next day that the police show up, take in James and his wife to the police station, and they talked them out of phoning the police the night before by saying, "Oh, the police are so corrupt here that they will literally rape you before they do whatever else they want with you in the station." So they're very scared when they're being taken out of the police station here. I mean, in hindsight, I think you can say, "Oh, she's probably just saying that so that they're going to be they'll actually get in trouble for this because now they've done a hit and run."
Yeah.
If they called it in, maybe it wouldn't be such a harsh punishment because whatever,
they could say, "Oh, okay, it was an accident. You didn't mean to do this, and you are taking the system into account here."
Yes,
you have done what your duty as a citizen.
So when they get separated at the police station, like you get the fear. You're like, "Oh God, where's the wife going?" Like this is really bad. And this is where we're introduced to Thresh, the detective who comes in, and he's very matter of fact, and he even plays with the themes here again because he says, "Hey, the guy that rented you the car was my uncle, and he'll be in big trouble if that goes on the record. So are you okay with saying that you didn't rent it from my uncle when I asked you in a minute?" And James is like, "Well, does that affect what's going to happen to me?" He's like, "No, but I would appreciate it." And he's like, "Well, okay then. No, your uncle did not rent us the car." And it's just this little slither of the idea that even this cop is using his position to let someone get away with something. It's much more minor than what these rich assholes are doing in the movie, but it's just an example of someone getting away with something with no consequences, because that's the main theme of the movie. There's no denying that's what the main thing is.
Absolutely.
So yeah.
I actually, we'll get to it much later on, especially when Gabby is calling out the review that was left on his book. But I honestly wonder how much, especially with the character of Thresh, is this concept of nepotism as well. Somebody, and obviously Brandon Cronenberg, growing up as the junior Cronenberg, knows a lot about being accused of nepotism, of being told you only got this because of your father. He
probably has had to live with that for a lot of his career, and maybe now that he's got 2 prestigious films that got standing ovations, maybe now he's probably satisfying that part of him a little bit more. But you're right, he's probably grown up feeling that he has to work extra hard to prove that it's not just because he's my daddy and what does he do,
I especially someone pointed out, and because I was looking around at trivia and stuff like that, is pretty much every time that Brandon Cronenberg is brought up for any articles, even promoting this movie, it's almost always Brandon Cronenberg, parentheses, son of David Cronenberg, end parenthesis. And it's that sort of thing of, how do you get out of that? How do you manage to escape that idea of you're only as good as this other person that you're linked to?
Yeah,
I think that's a big part of James as well.
Yeah, I think that's true with his wife and everything. Yeah, absolutely. I think a big part of it was Cronenberg, specifically the name, is that Cronenberg's such a unique, memorable name. Don't get me wrong, I think any director or actor as a kid who then becomes a director or actor, the articles will put, yes, he is related to so-and-so, they'll mention it, right? But I think because the name Cronenberg, it conjures a very specific type of movie. It conjures a very specific type of, artistry. And I think because of that, there is this, and that's kind of what I was talking about at the start of the show, was this idea of him living up and somehow carving out his own feeling, whilst also somehow still feeling like he still feels like the offspring of David Cronenberg in a lot of ways.
Yeah.
So it's very interesting, which almost like implies to me that, because he could have done like romantic comedies, he could have like done stuff to try and be as different as he could from his father. If anything, to me, the types of movies that he's making, saying that, you know what, I get what my dad was doing, and I embrace it. I embrace that I am part of this lineage, but I'm also going to prove that this is not nepotism. I'm going to prove that I can do this, and I'm going to prove that you assholes will never doubt me. And who knows? I've never even heard an interview with the guy. He might just love the fact that he's David Cronenberg's son. He might laugh it up every time it's brought up. He's like, yeah, I'm Cronenberg the second, baby.
Yeah, entirely possible. But it is something where it's one of those things where you see sometimes celebrities take on like a different name. For instance, the biggest one that comes to mind is Nicolas Cage, not playing on his Coppola background. But yeah, he knows he's Brandon Cronenberg. I'd imagine that he understands that does come with some weight, and he's able to use that a little bit. So, yeah. I don't know.
I mean, I think it's an interesting thing to bring up because, like you said, there's 2 examples of nepotism in this movie, and that's very much worth talking about. So, yeah, obviously he agrees to sign the thing to get... Obviously, he doesn't really understand what he's saying to him. This is clearly not something that the rest of the world knows much about. Like this.
And not to mention, this island has their own writing system as well. So when you see the contract or paper he's signing, it's just complete nonsense.
It's just gibberish. Yeah, you can't read anything. So, but for this guy, it's just like, this is just, another day, another job here. Just, you pay for this and... you get a clone, he'll die instead, blah, blah, blah. So we get to see part of this process. Not all of it, but we get to see part of it, which is, he gets, like, dressed down, or stripped down, I should say. They're taking measures. They put this weird, like, mouth thing in to keep his mouth wide open, and a shower cap, and they send him into this gooey pool. Possibly the titular infinity pool.
I mean, there also was an actual infinity pool at the hotel.
Well, we never see it, though. We only hear about the infinity pool.
I think we see it. I feel like we see it.
No, the one they bring up, though, they talk about this one that's going in a different building, because it's Albin was, like, developing this other resort, like, down the beach, and it was the infinity pool there that collapsed or something and killed a guy, and and all of his rich friends all get blamed for it, and that's how they all got, quote-unquote, executed.
Fair enough. I mean, there were definitely pools in the visuals of the hotel, but maybe they weren't actual infinity pools.
What? Is infinity pool a real term? I don't know what an infinity pool is. So
an infinity pool is basically, it's a pool that it's filled up perfectly to the brim, and it's built so that you can't see any of the edges of it.
Oh, okay.
So that way it looks like it stretches on like forever into the distance.
I know what you're talking. I've seen them. I just didn't know that's what they were called.
Yeah.
But I'm going to guess that the titles might be more double meaning than just literal an infinity pool. I was just cracking a joke about the pool of goo that he was in. But it just sort of cuts away. Like, he's in there, and you sort of the music ramps up, and it cuts away, and he wakes up. Actually, no, there's a couple of quick flashes. He hallucinates Gabby. He sees Gabby dancing naked in front of him.
Yeah, it's just the first. We get this same kind of sequence later on, but it's a very sort of. I don't want to say the word trippy because it sounds too basic, but that's what it is. It's a very much feeling like he's been injected with some sort of hallucinogens, and he doesn't know what's real right now.
Yeah, I think this is the movie telling us that drug that Gabby gives him later, that she says this is something the locals use and it's considered religious. I think this is telling us that there's some of that in whatever they're doing to him here, because he's getting a very similar visual effect in terms of what he's looking at. And it's showing him what he desires right now. And it's not his wife he's desiring her.
Yep.
So he wakes up, and his wife's there, and like, oh, it's okay. And I was wondering, like, is she getting cloned as well? But it's just him. I assume because he was driving, he's the one that's being sort of propped up for this crime. And like, yeah, the oldest son of the man you killed is going to kill your clone. And no, you guys have to be there. I'm sorry. That's the rules. You need to be there. And they see the clone. They have him looking like a sort of like wet body bag thing that he's sort of been birthed into, and he wakes up, and it obviously freaks them out, and they run out. But we get this scene where they're sitting in the stand, and this was a great little detail, is that So James and M, the wife, are sitting in these stands watching this execution about to take place, and the people in front of them, just like with one row between them, is like all of this man's family. It's like all his wife and his like daughters or whoever. And I'm like, this is so weird. Like, to me, this was almost the most trippy part of this whole watching your own execution, was the idea that he's in the stands with the loved ones of the person that died, that he caused the death of. And I do think it is his fault, because I'm not convinced he was sober enough to drive, quite frankly. I think when he said, yeah, I can drive, like he's saying that, I'm not sure if I completely believe him in the moment.
I mean, regardless of whether or not he was at least distracted the whole way through. It was his fault. It wasn't like something else happened that it wasn't on him squarely. It was all him.
Yeah. And after all, what's the most common thing that happens to like rich assholes? DUIs. So the idea of like mapping that in here a little bit makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah. So, I mean, especially if you take this to the full thing of they are able to pay their way out of this, and the clone just represents however much money has to be spent to get out of it, whatever fine is placed. It is quite literally the same as them sitting across from each other in a court, this family who has lost everything and this rich prick, and it's just him looking over being like, yeah, I did it. Here's some money.
Yeah.
Hope that makes it okay.
Yeah. But of course, the interesting thing is that once this kid starts stabbing his clone, right, and he stabs him a lot. It's not just like one or two stabs. He stabs him a good number of times.
It's brutal.
Maybe even more in my count. I don't know. I don't know if you counted. I didn't count, but it wouldn't surprise me. This is one of these stupid things with the MPA, though. It's like, wait, no. You can have 9 stabs. You can have 7. 7's okay for our rating, but 9's too many.
Look, Floris over here, she gets real woozy if you do 8 stabs. So 7's okay, but after that, we have to call it.
But of course, James smiles a little bit at the end of the scene. And one of the things, when they go back to the hotel, and M just wants to go home. It's like, let's start packing. We need to get out of here. This was a horrific experience. He says he can't find his passport, and I don't think it's meant to be like a big surprise later that he's lying, that he's just got it hidden somewhere because he wants to stay, because this experience has unlocked something. But even in the moment, I'm like, I don't believe you. I don't believe that you can't find it. I think you're lying.
I'm 50-50 because at this point I was already suspicious of how much, because obviously someone had to inform the police that it was them. So I was already suspicious of Gabby and her husband. And I thought maybe while they were out doing the police thing, they may have stolen the passport.
Oh, you thought, yeah, okay. I did consider that, but it was just, there was something about the way he came out and said it. It just made it feel like, no, he wants to stay here. He wants to, like, see some of this through, or whatever it may be, like, whatever this experience is. Because he comes home with an urn of the ashes of his of his clone. The first of a few, might I add.
I was going to say, he's going to build up a collection here.
So she just wants to leave, and she's really disturbed. Later on when they're lying in bed, she's like, "How could you just sit there and like because she was crying, she was looking away, like this was horrific to her, and she's like, how could you just sit there and do nothing and not react to it?" And like, I think a healthy person might still act that way, and maybe not smile at the end, but a healthy person might just be locked in fear, like just not knowing how to react. Because I've certainly had times in my life where I don't give a reaction and people think I'm being weird, but I'm like, no, I'm just in shock. I can't.
Exactly. It's the quite literally, it's the unable to look away from a car wreck sort of reaction, where it's just this horrific thing is happening, but the mind cannot process it, so you're just stuck.
But of course, we know that she's onto something real here, because he did smile at the end. This wasn't just he couldn't look away. There was something else here, and it was almost like the part of him that was holding himself back, at least to him spiritually, was just killed. Like the part that had writer's block, or the part who was being pinned. Because one of the big things that Gabby starts saying quite quickly after this is that, oh, that wife of yours, she's the type of woman that holds a man down and convinces him he's weak. And again, it's that immediate gratification of her propping him up to try and make him do more extreme things with her and her group. But it's that idea that, in his head, the wife represents this nagging voice, the old trope of the wife being naggy, but that she's this nagging presence in his life that has diminished him and made him think that he can't write, made him think that he's not worthwhile, that he is just tagging along for the money.
Yeah.
That he's got a free ride. It's basically all of his insecurities in a lot of ways, I guess. Like, he just looks at, when he looks at his wife, the implication I get from how he acts when all this stuff starts unfolding is that his wife to him is just like a person that represents every insecurity he has, because she's there to know what they all are. And instead of that being someone who he feels support, I'm not saying that she doesn't. Like, the wife definitely seems like the more healthy one of the two as this movie goes on. Don't get me wrong.
Yeah, that's also a thing that comes up a lot later. As we get more and more of these people who are just into doing this constantly as doubles, all of them, at least as far as I can recall, are in partnerships. All of them are doing this like husband and wife sort of thing. And it's this idea of all of them have someone who sees this darker side of them, sees this more insecurity side, and they stay regardless. They understand it and they enforce it. They make it all the more. Whether that's healthy or not, they do it. Well, whereas M is not that for James.
I think that's what's interesting on that point, is that in this case, it's not healthy because it is like these bad sides of themselves being brought out. But it is also kind of a representation of a healthy thing and why his marriage isn't working. Is that as bad as these people can be, they have someone there to accept them at their darkest and their worst, and that's someone you want in a partner. So these people happen to be doing these horrific things, but from like a macro sense, like what it represents for his relationship and the idea of having someone that is with you for the ride does actually, it feels like a positive element sort of nestled within all this negativity that's kind of surrounding it, which is interesting. It's a very, very layered in that sense. So James goes out sauntering and he ends up running into Gabby, who's just watching, and he's obviously a little bit miffed because it doesn't take a large brain to think that they probably told the police, hey, it was him that did that thing. Okay,
for sure, he
killed that guy. So she says, no, I wanted to give you an experience. Think of it as a gift. You need inspiration. Do you feel inspired? Like, I bet he does. But she's like, hey, come with me. And she takes him to her group, so Albin's there, and there's like maybe 3 other couples who are part of this group. And it becomes very clear. And I love the way this is shot, because it's a wide shot, but it's really just him perfectly lit in the middle, and then it's just the backs of most of the other people. Like, you can see Gabby because she's like next to him, but the way it's framed, it really feels like they're like surrounded him and they're enclosing in on him as they're asking him questions, bringing up the idea, do you ever wonder if they switched you with the clone before you woke up and it was the real person who died? All right, we're getting a little bit I don't want to reference the movie because it's a spoiler for that movie, but it was making me think of another movie.
But see, he as soon as they started that like conversation, that was like me thinking, oh, okay, this is where we're finally going to get into the sci-fi aspect, the viewing of these consequences, and that's where the movie's going to kind of move from there. But then almost immediately the guy who brings it up is shot down, and everyone's just like, who cares? It doesn't matter.
Yeah, which I think is fine. Like, this movie is not about exploring that side of this.
That's the point where I realized that this movie was not about exploring that side. I kept thinking, I guess it's probably because you told me, hey, join this sci-fi podcast. Here's the first thing we're doing. And I kept waiting for it to get really sci-fi.
That is really sci-fi, though. Like, this does not make it any less sci-fi than if they explored.
No. But I feel like if you would have if instead I was on Screams After Midnight and you said, hey, let's do this movie, I would have gone in with completely different expectations as to where it would have eventually ended up.
But everything operates because of this cloning technology that this society has.
Absolutely.
So so it's like, okay, they're like, hey, we want to do something tonight. Like the rich guy who basically got us all in trouble and got us all executed. Again, not us, them personally, but their doubles executed. Like, we want to get revenge on him, so we want you to come with us to do that. And again, it feels like this peer pressure kind of thing. There's also a scene sort of in the middle of all this where he goes to the bathroom and Gabby goes in to talk to him, and this is one of the, I think this is the scene where she says about his wife's like holding him down, that she convinces you you're weak, you need someone like me, blah 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 blah, all that kind of. I'm paraphrasing slightly, I can't remember the exact lines of dialogue.
It is worth noting though that within this group as well, everyone's just kind of lounging about, but specifically not with their own partners. Like, everyone's we see Albin is cuddled up with this random other woman in the group, And it kind of reveals this idea that they have fully given into this idea of just hedonism, where it's do whatever it is you want and you won't face any consequences, especially within the in-group. Like, there is zero judgment within this group.
So they break into the gift shop to get masks. So they're all wearing these masks for this next big part, where they go to this big house and they come in and they strip this man and his wife. So they're butt-ass naked and they're tied up and sort of on their knees. So it feels like this feels super villainous. And there's a moment here where Gabby comes round and like there's a gun in James's hand, and she's like, "Have you ever fired a gun at someone before?" And she points his hand at the guy's head, and James like still has like a line where he's kind of pulling back and being like, no, that's not happening. And it's almost like this sort of like midpoint test of like seeing how far he's willing to go right now, because they she wants to keep pushing him further. Honestly, the whole movie in a lot of ways felt like someone who's trying to lure someone into heavy drug use, like someone who's like, obviously there's literal drug use at one or two points, but it's very different. It's a fake thing. It's not like a real.
I mean, the whole thing of hedonism and such like that, or the whole thing of drug use, I should say, is it activates the pleasure centers of your brain, and you have to do more and more drugs in order to get that same sort of high each time. And it's the same sort of thing with this group, is they have to do bigger and bigger things in order to get that same rush.
Which also ties into the wealth thing, is the idea if you're wealthy, you can do anything you want with your money. You start that's why the theory is anyway that some rich people end up with really extreme things they like fetishes, or really, because if they can have sex whenever they want and they have a lot of sex, then eventually regular sex isn't that exciting anymore, so let's spice it up with something else, and then it keeps escalating. Kind of a similar idea here, because this is all rich people, and we can do anything we want. We got away with accidentally killing someone. Now we do something even more.
Purposely kill someone.
So,
and then we purposely torture someone and then kill them.
But that's
first we do all of these bigger and bigger things as we grow.
Absolutely. And even before this scene ends, like even before like the shootout starts, where like a security guard comes in and what's his name? Albin gets shot in the leg, and Gabby's firing back at him and kills the guard. Like, even before that point, this film, like, you've broken into this family's house, you've stripped them down naked, so they're very vulnerable and exposed, right? Literally, you're seeing this husband and wife both completely naked, and they're on their knees. I don't think they're literally begging for their life, but they might as well be. Like, it has that vibe where they're scared that they're going to be killed, and it's like, you're acting like terrorists right now. This is horrific in a way that is beyond. And it's this idea, the rich don't care about the poor, and they'll even though this family's clearly wealthy enough, but
and that's the thing, is like, it's not even about them being poor. It's at this point, because this guy is like, it's a decently sized house, it's whatever it is. It's more so just the tourists are the only ones who get this out. They're the only ones who get this cloning thing. The other rich people who live on this island permanently, they don't have that out. They don't have the ability to do a clone and then just continue living on. So they have to face the consequences if they do something wrong.
Yeah, this is just a tourist thing, which again ties into this idea of special treatment for the elite. You come in here, you're elite, you get special privileges, you can get away with just about anything. And it does this great thing where they sort of like stumble back to James's hotel room with Albin shot in the leg, and they're trying to treat the wound. And Em wasn't there for all this, and like starts screaming and freaking out when she sees it all. This is horrific to her, as it should be. And it does a smash cut to them all sitting in the police station in the white robes waiting for their surgery. And I'm like, so we're just like, they've just taken this for granted that they're all going to be cloned and their clones will all be executed. They don't care because they know it won't be them. So they're all just sitting around having just such benign small talk, like nothing of
like what. One of them's asking like, "Oh, hey, did you remember to turn off this alarm or something like that?" And it's like, "Yeah, I took care of it."
Like, it's just nonsense. And they do a little twist here, actually, where there's a twist here that these are actually the clones, because they take them through. The detective says, we want to make an example of you because this is not a playground for tourists to come and do whatever they want, even though it kind of is. So he takes them all into like the execution room, tries to tie them all down, and James fights back and like sort of like punches a few of them, is struggling, and then he gets slit in the throat. And that's when the camera sort of goes up and reveals that the real people are all watching. This is the clones that are dying, and the real people Like, the movie's like sort of subtly try to trick you and say, hey, because they've done something so bad, they're just going to kill the real people. They're not, but that's the vibe that gives you.
And I think the biggest part of that, the most important moment from the scene, is the fact that it's obvious the clones don't know they're the clones.
Yes.
They wake up, they're in this room, and they think they're still waiting to be cloned.
And that's the important thing that was mentioned earlier. That's a very important detail, is that the clones have all the memories, at least at the point of cloning, what the real person knew. So for all intents and purposes, they're still a full-formed person because they still have all the memories. There's, they've got the same fears and all the rest of it. So this is really them fighting for their lives. And
they freak out. They are not okay.
The real people, on the other hand, they're like, yeah, what a show, James! I never knew you had it in you. Look at that fight. Like, they're enjoying themselves. And again, it's this idea of like not caring which part of yourself you're sacrificing for your own like satisfaction or enjoyment. You know, you could even, like, if you're saying this is all kind of an allusion to like taking like strong drugs, you could almost say that I don't care about killing my brain cells for, you know, a good time.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, also I think that it's going back to the rich and elite metaphor here. I mean, this is a perfect illustration of how would these people react if they weren't given the out, if they knew that they weren't going to be able to use their money or their power to get out of it. And the answer is they're going to be scared shitless. They're not going to be okay. They can't possibly fathom what they're going to deal with here if they actually have to face any sort of consequences.
And sure enough, this, you know, keeps them going. It's after this where she gives them this drug thing, and
I think at this point M has officially bailed. Yeah, I think she has left the island.
M's gone, and even points out that she's already been charged for the room for the next while so that he can stay here, and she leaves. Gabby gives him this, you know, this local drug thing that we said, this hallucinogen, and he starts to see kaleidoscope style stuff, naked Gabby, and then they're clearly having sex, and then all of a sudden in this, and again it's all very artistic and stylish, but you start to see the other people in the group also having sex, and it mixes up, you know, partners. Sometimes it's two women, sometimes it's two men, sometimes there's three of them together doing something, and it keeps sort of bouncing around. What I'm expecting wasn't in your cut. You probably had the weird nipple moment if that was this scene. I don't know if it was actually.
Yeah, it was, and we did.
Yeah. So yeah, the nipple kind of, it was like a fake nipple started to extend, and then someone was sucking the out of the teat, if you will.
As people were describing it in the trivia, it was a maggot that was coming out of the nipple.
But there's a quick shot that really stuck with me though.
Okay.
Was. Okay, so you know how the xenomorph in Alien?
Okay.
Right? The mouth comes out, right?
Uh-huh.
There was a shot of someone's vagina, and then the penis came out from inside the vagina.
Yeah, I can't say I recall that. Yeah, that's a you thing, buddy.
It was not a me thing. It's the movie. I didn't think of this, but it comes out, and I want to say the vagina might rip apart as it does as well.
Yeah, definitely did not have that.
Yeah,
we did have some, as far as I can tell, stock footage. I might have been real of like internal and like a penis like inside of a vagina.
Yeah,
but no, we did not have xenomorph exploding out of a.
Well, no, it was a penis. It wasn't a xenomorph. It reminded me of the xenomorph mouth coming out of the outer mouth, I guess.
I would imagine that made several people in the MPAA just immediately rip up their cards and say NC-17. It doesn't matter what happens now.
Honestly, I'm sure you got the effect, and I'm sure it's only really those two scenes that probably get that greatly affected by the cuts. But I will say, for the sake of that one shot, which is going to leave an impression, I'm glad I watched the uncut version.
I have no interest in returning to this movie immediately, but I kind of want to just to see that shot.
Oh dear. I think there was something else really graphic that flashed either right before or after it, but I was so I was too busy thinking at that moment to even take in what the next thing was that was really graphic. So whole orgy sort of like thing happening there, which, you know, so at this point in the movie, and this is where it sort of takes a turn, where they tell James that he's going to get revenge on what's his name, Thresh, the detective who cloned him and all that. And he's up for it, and they go to get him wherever he lives, and they see like a van leaving of police. Well, and yeah,
he's at a hospital because he has to get some sort of like infusion or something, so he's actually going to be out cold anyway, and they just kind of wheel him out from the hospital.
Yeah, Thresh, yeah. So they take him out of the hospital, and they take him back to wherever, and he's got like a hood over his face, right? You can't see his head. And James is, he's drinking, they're dancing around. I think actually just before this stuff, I think there was the scene where, I think it's just after the orgy, where they're just sitting at breakfast and they're just throwing stuff at people, and they're just being obnoxious, horrible assholes. And it's just, again, this is what you imagine, just little shitheads who think they can do whatever they want are doing.
This is viewing it from the outside. This is because the whole orgy scene was all internal. It was all this idea of sexual gratification and just pure hedonism on their side. And then it hard cuts to this dude who's just trying to enjoy his vacation with his wife. And James is just like throwing little like pits of peaches at them as they're trying to just sit there. And that's exactly how these people would look if we ran into them in real life. They'd just be pricks in the corner of the restaurant.
Yeah, and obviously at this point in the movie, I was thinking of different ways it might be going. I was thinking, like maybe because he's cut off from his wife now, he won't have money next time he needs to be cloned.
Right.
I really thought that's maybe where it was going, where he was going to actually face consequences at the end. Obviously, he goes down a different path here where, he beats up what he thinks is this cop with a bat or whatever, and he's kicking him, and then pisses on him, and then Applin joins in, he starts pissing on him, and then after this, Gabby just comes over all seductively, takes off the hood to reveal that it's a clone of James, that they paid off the cops to make an extra clone, and James freaks out. And I think this ties into what we're saying about the mass execution scene where it turned out there were clones, but I think it's even more potent here. Is people, when you're talking to children and you're trying to teach them right from wrong, one of the things you might say to them is that you don't treat anyone the way that you wouldn't want to be treated. You treat someone with respect because that's what you want. And it's this idea that he literally realizes that he's torturing a version of himself. And as we've already learned, this is a version of himself that has all of his memories. He has his history. This is not just like a mindless clone.
Yeah.
And of course it freaks him out. Of course it does.
Yeah. I think if we're looking for it more on like a metaphorical level, obviously what you're saying of he's just finds out, treats people the way you want to be treated. But I think it also comes from...
I think I said that because this is where he finally does a line that he feels he's crossed. Because up until this point, he is on board with being awful to people. He's on board with torturing someone. And then he sees it's himself, and that's what gives him pause.
This is where I think the transition happens in terms of the metaphor, though, is that up to this point, he's told by Gabby that basically it's not your fault. It's your wife who's holding you back. It's all this other stuff. You are a great writer. You are this good person who is worthy of being able to do this stuff. But I think this is the first scene where it's shown that the person who's holding him back, the person who's causing him the most pain to himself, is himself.
Oh, absolutely.
He's the one who's doing this.
Yeah, I wouldn't say it's a change in metaphor. I'd say the metaphor is the same. It's just revealing, he's thought this the whole time internally, that his wife's the one holding him back, and Gabby's feeding into that belief. But in reality, it's never been her. It's always been him. I think, that's just... The also, movie's sort of revealing the truth here, I guess, is what I'll say.
There is a sequence, I can't remember where it takes place. It might be after this, but there is a sequence where he hallucinates that his wife is actually the one strangling him and killing him.
Yeah, it's after. I think maybe it may actually be even after the stuff in the bus and that.
After the bus, okay.
Yeah, I think it is. Yeah, I think it's when he's in the
farm.
think
it adds to that. Like I said, that same sort of metaphor of he puts this blame off on other people rather than taking it for himself.
Yeah, because in that vision you're talking about, it's not her at first, and then the person. It's like the kid of the farmer, and then. That flesh rips in half open. And it becomes her. And I thought it was interesting because then in that vision, she rips him open and there's nothing inside him.
Right.
And I thought that was a very poignant kind of like moment and image, is that he's empty inside. He doesn't feel like he has anything inside. And again, that's more of his views on himself, is that he feels like he's not worthy. And he's so scared of not being worthy that he's been blaming his wife for feeling that way. But it's not on her. This is, you know, it's self-reflection. It's examining your own flaws and all that stuff. So... But and this is where Gabby changes, though, because after he runs away from this scene and they're all just drunk and having a good time, Gabby like follows and like knocks on the door and says like, "Oh, James, don't be pathetic. It's very unattractive," and starts like mocking him and starts belittling him and treating him like absolute shit because he's not going as far as she wants him to go. And this is enough of a line. This is where he like sort of goes and gets his passport from where he's hidden it. And he tries to leave in the morning. You know, he's got a hat and glasses on. He's trying to sneak out quietly onto the shuttle bus.
Because nobody would see a Skarsgård and his lumbering figure leaving the place.
And he's driving on the bus, and sure enough, these two cars with all these people of this group drive up next to the bus when it's like going down the side of this like sort of hillside road and start beeping the horn, and they drive in front of the bus. And this is where like Mia Goth's been great throughout the whole movie. I think her yelling with this gun in her hand is like where her performance goes to the next level, because you really get this idea of this deranged person who believes that no one can say no to her, because she straight up threatens, if you don't send out James from that bus, I'm going to start killing everyone on the bus. And I'm like, I think she believes she can get away with that. Like,
but she can. Everything we've seen is she can get away with it.
Oh yeah. I mean, obviously, just about the point being is that because she's at the point there where she believes that this is how awful she is. If she doesn't get what she wants, she'll just start killing people. So James comes off, and then there's like a literal parade of humiliation where they're driving the cars slowly behind him and they're making him walk in front, and she's lying on top of the front of the car having a picnic. She's like drinking booze and eating something, and this is where she's like mocking him, saying how he's pathetic, and you really believed I wanted you, you believed that I read your book. And she whips out a printout of one of the reviews of his book and starts like she doesn't analyze it, but she's reading the review, which is analyzing the book, and saying how he's got nothing to say, so he tries to make up for it with pretension. And I'm like, and this ties into the idea of him being hollow on the inside.
But I just, with that exact line, I feel like that was something that like was said about possession or something, or possessors, that he's just immediately pulling out, because it's so clear in this sequence, at least, that James is a self-reflection on Brandon, that he is this thing of how good is he individually compared to the nepotism idea.
I think it's interesting as well as the idea that this is a big motivating factor, and like we've talked about how he started to project onto the wife and seeing her as this person who is holding him down in some ways and making him feel smaller because he's not doing good enough. But I think right at the start of the movie, they set up this, he wrote a book and it didn't do very well. He's not written another one, right? It's not a thing. That's the first thing that Gabby and Co prod him with right away. It's like, how you wrote a book, where's the new one? They know that's an awkward question when they ask it. They know that's going to like make him feel something. I think this idea of like the criticism he got of the book is maybe where he started feeling hollow, and he's felt that way maybe increasingly since, right? You know, the idea that it hit him hard, maybe in a way that he's not even realized.
I have no idea what that was. Sorry.
Sounded like some sort of demented duck. What's happening?
It was something vibrating, but I don't know what. Maybe my phone went off. I don't know.
Unprofessional.
I'm sorry.
Your first episode. Come on, David.
I'm throwing all my electronics away.
Yes. So, like this literal humiliation parade, I thought was like, this is where we're almost throwing reality. I mean, it is still real what's happening here, but it almost felt like, okay, we're just diving head into like what the movie's about now without really considering the larger real world consequences. And he manages to he runs away, he fights back a little bit, he sort of knocks the gun out of her hand, because she's holding a gun the entire time in this scene, by the way. She's pointing a gun at him the whole time. And he ends up running off, and they're just laughing, and they fight him a little bit, but they're kind of enjoying it, and they're just sort of, they feel like bullies,
Yeah. I especially appreciate this scene because it feels like, on first watch through, it feels like this is the moment where he finally takes control of his life. like he's finally like fighting back against these people who are leading him down this wrong path. But by the time you reach the end, you realize it's nowhere near enough.
No.
That's not what we're leading towards. He needs a much bigger self-realization to get there.
I think, yeah, if you look at this as a movie about, like, how much you can punish yourself if, like, in this particular case, they're using, like, criticism because you're an artist who's put out work, and it's being criticized, and you've let that eat at you so much that you have no self-worth anymore, and, like, how much of a hole he's dug himself into over these years, to the point where this has all worked in him. And, you know, I mean, this is maybe a bit too surface level, but maybe this is even saying something about the dangers of, like, fake admiration and toxic fandom or something like that.
I mean,
you can see there's maybe a little of that in here. But anyway, he escapes, however brief, he runs off, and he, you know, dramatically ironic, but very intentional, he ends up at the farm of the family who the man that he killed by accident is living, and they seem to help him, you know, because he passes out in front of the building and he wakes up like in the bed in the barn. Like they've patched them up, or they've at least put him in a bed.
Now, obviously he does reach a farm. I'm not questioning that, because that's how the whole ending comes out. But the next sequence that we see is the son of the farmer come into the room and basically start strangling him.
Sure. Yeah.
And obviously, I think that that's implied to be a dream sequence.
Oh, it definitely is. Yeah.
Is there anything to say that this is the same farm outside of that dream sequence?
Know, that is fair, but I actually had the thought that this was the farm of that family the second he saw it, because it just story-wise felt too prominent. So I think it doesn't actually matter if it really is or isn't. I think the point is that when he looks at it, that's what he's thinking about. He's thinking about the man that he killed, and now he's finally maybe feeling some level of guilt or irony of the fact that, oh, I've ended up where you know, this man was a loving husband and father or whatever. So whether it actually is or isn't, I don't even think it's important. I think it's more about it just represents that to him.
Yeah, I think that this is in terms of the idea of, you know, legal system, elites and all that, obviously in terms of a legal punishment, they can't get away from, or they can get away from it with money. But in terms of the guilt, that's the sort of thing where someone who, as we've established, James is a bit more down to earth than possibly these other people, because he is not a part of money. So that guilt is something that's going to come back to him. It's something that's going to hit him. And I think that's what this scene is basically, it's the guilt coming back of his original crime there.
And I think it's the idea that, obviously if you suddenly have access to the money, like he kind of has because of his marriage, there is this temptation to use it in certain ways, and there's temptation to be seduced by the power of it. And that's kind of also what this movie's about in a large sense, is the seduction of being able to just do what you want. So, but all the group, led by Gabby, all show up outside and sort of almost make not a ring, but they've got like 3 cars with all their headlights on, and it's kind of makes a little fight pit, effectively. Yeah. And they pull out the clone, who they've got on a leash, and they refer to simply as Dog. And they say, hey, it's time for you to kill the dog. And obviously he doesn't want to, but this other version of him, which has been clearly held captive for a couple of days at this point, is almost feral, and is like sort of fighting, thinking maybe if he can kill the real one, that maybe he'll get to be the real one, and that he can get out of this. So it becomes this literal fight to see which version of himself gets to live. And you can, you know, look at this in some different ways, because I think the fact that he's doing this is a negative thing, right? This is him going one step further. He's been forced to kill a part of himself. I don't think they're doing this out of some sort of symbolic way of killing the bad part of yourself. I don't think it's that at all.
I mean, I don't think it's part of symbolic of like killing the bad part of yourself, but I mean, obviously all of the imagery in this sequence is very emblematic of rebirth. Yeah. It's very emblematic of, you know, the old you is dead, the new you is coming on. So I guess it's not so much the bad part as much as just who you were before all of this.
But it's a rebirth in their eyes, though. And I think at this point in this group, like, so just to sort of go after this, so he kills the clone, right? He's able to win the fight. Eventually, once he's attacked enough, he fights back. Very brutally. Yeah, he punches him in the head so much that he starts to just cave in his head, which is very similar to the victim, you know, with the driving early on. So at the end of the movie, like, and like the whole group's now, it's time to go home. Storm season's coming in, and they're all getting on the shuttle, and they all sit in their various couples or whatever on the coach, and he's at the back on his own, and they're all just making small talk, and it's very clear that now their vacation's over, that they're back to being whatever their normal is. So they're making small talk like they're just normal people now, and he's like still like up the back, shell shocked, and sort of like just feeling outside of their world. He can't just go back to being normal again. And even at the airport, like he's with Gabby and Albin. And they're saying, hey, yeah, we're going back to LA to do this, blah, 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 have a nice flight. And I thought the performance here from Mia Goth, again, was great, because her body language in this scene is just like, yeah, this is a normal person who you've kind of become an acquaintance of. There is not a hint from her in this scene, the way she talks to him, looks at him, or doesn't look at him, that there was ever any sexual encounter, that there was ever any tension between them, or anything happened. You wouldn't think you would think they barely knew each other from the way they talked to each other in this scene.
Yeah, throughout this whole movie, like her makeup's done, her hair's let down, it's always styled. She's wearing very nice dresses and such, and bikinis. But then as they're getting on this bus and going to the airport, she's in a sweatshirt. She's not wearing any makeup. Her hair's up. Like she's just looking like any other person that you would see at the grocery store, pretty much. Yeah, and it's just basically an entirely different character at this point, because in truth, it really is. When she is going back to her quote-unquote real life, she has to face consequences again, and therefore she's going to put that mask back on. She's not going to be this person that she truly is underneath.
Yeah, and he sits there, and I think this is the point where, to me, the ending, I don't think you necessarily have to take it as literal. I think you can sort of still take it as, he did go home because he's supposed to go home to his wife. And that's up to you if you really want to agree with that or not, I suppose. Not you specifically, I just mean in general.
Yeah.
Because I think, to me, this ending where it looks like he's not got on the plane and there's no one else left in the airport, and then it cuts back to the hotel and you see it's all been covered up for storm season, and there's just rain pummeling down on the pool, pummeling down on the decks and the chairs, and then the final couple of shots are just him sitting on a chair on the beach as the rain's pouring down on him, and that's where the movie ends. To me, that ending saying that, like, mentally, he will never leave this place. Or, at the very least, he's not left it yet. Like, he's still trapped here as far as him as a person goes. Maybe not physically. He might have literally went home, but mentally, he is still trapped here because of what went on here. And... Yeah.
I do think it's very interesting that before he goes to the airport, before he hops on the bus, he actually is talking to M on the phone. He's apologizing. He's saying, I don't, all this bad stuff. And it does sound like he is going to make his way back home, because obviously, as we've said in the rest of the movie, is that she is not the kind of partner that, like, she's not as supportive as the other partners were in this. So it was really up for debate as to whether or not he would return back to her.
Although I would like to
said and done.
Point this out, though, that the movie's very much from his perspective, and when you say she's not as supportive as the other partners, I do wonder, is that just because of what he's put, like, he's only getting back what he puts into the relationship himself. I don't think it's ever tried to say that she's this villainous wife or anything like that. It's
I mean, it's definitely, especially because it's from his perspective, we never really even find out what she does for a living. All we know is she's rich, and obviously that's the part that matters to him. And that the father is in publishing. Those are the two things we know about her, and it's the only things that matter to James.
And I think when you look at the ending, whether you're taking it literal or just like a representation of, like, him mentally never being able to leave this place, I think you can even read that a couple of different ways. You can read that as he's so horrified by who people are and what these other people have done and made him do, that he will never get over it, and he's going to be trapped here forever because of that. Or alternatively, like, on some level, he knows he actually did have a rebirth and he liked a lot of what he did, and there's guilt over that. Or thirdly, it's the idea that, much like these other people will also mentally never leave here. And they are, I mean, obviously the director could have shown this by having them also sitting with them, I suppose, if he wanted to. But this idea that once you've truly felt that freedom of no consequences, you're always wanting to go back. You're always yearning for that again. So that idea that he's still there because he needs to go back again at some... Because there's even a line, one of the last things they say to him, even though they're in, like, normal mode. They say, "Oh, I hope we see you again next year," right?
Yeah.
As if they're just casual friends from a trip. But obviously, we know that as soon as they come back, they're going to like slip those masks off, and they're going to turn into these awful, awful human beings again.
Yeah, the only thing that tears me away from the idea that he enjoys it and wants to go back, like he wants to be there, is the storm imagery. I think that having it be this torrential downpour, he doesn't want that in any regard. He might be stuck there mentally, like you're saying, but it's not something that he's happy with.
He's disturbed by the fact that he's like still there and might never be able to sort of completely leave it behind. Yeah.
Also, I like this is where I thought I saw the infinity pool itself. Is there's a specific imagery where they show the infinity pool, and because the edge is not able to be seen, it looks like it's just water, and the shot is specifically of the water from the pool, clear crystal, super nice looking, and then it's, because you can't see the edge, the very next thing next to it is the ocean, and obviously it's rough, it's waves, it's dark, and it's that idea of the boundaries, these two different things that he's now become, of this darker entity, and then this mask that he has to have, are literally just right next to each other. They're all both right here.
Yeah,
for him.
No, that's good. Yeah, I like that. That's a good shot. Yeah, and I honestly, I don't even know which interpretation of the ending I like more, to be honest. Because sometimes I'll come out of a movie and I'll be, you know what, this one interpretation speaks to me and it makes the film richer. But this one, like, I don't think I've decided what outcome I like the most out of it.
No, I mean it all really goes. I think it depends more on the idea of how dour do you want him to have to be, because if he goes back and gets to live his life as normal, that's kind of a happy ending for him. Obviously he's still messed up in the head, but at least he gets, like, it's saying that society and such will never change and these people are able to just go and live their lives as normal. However, if you view it the idea that he literally is still on the island, then, or even just mentally he's stuck there, then it's this idea that no, there are consequences for your actions that you can't just put onto a double and throw that away.
Yeah, I think you could read it that way, that these other people are able to just switch off again, or switch back on again, if you will, depending on which way you want to look at it, and they can leave it behind. But for him, no, he'll always have the guilt of what he did here. He can never just let that go. He's not like them. And arguably you could say that's kind of a happy ending in a sense, because it means that he's still got a conscience, he's still human, he still has moral lines. And if he does go back to his wife, maybe it's this idea that he's realized, okay, I realized enough to know that I'm not one of those people, and that I should find happiness wherever I can. And at the very least, I think if anything, the movie's definitely a warning against being bitter and against, making yourself think that you feel unfulfilled by certain things and you can't do something, because everything that's preyed upon him with the temptation of Gabby, with the temptation of doing whatever you want and getting away with it with no consequences, it's all to fill a hole. And that hole is the infinity pool that he created for himself.
The real infinity pool was inside us all along.
Oh, dear.
So there's a website, I just had to check this. There's a website called doesthedogdie.com where they talk about movies and they advise people whether or not there are certain triggers.
It took me a second there to realize, why would you even check that for this? And I'm like, oh, wait a minute. Yeah, okay.
I had to know whether or not people were saying the dog died. And to be fair, most everything is pretty cut and dry one way or the other. There are 31 no, the dog does not die in this movie because they're taking it literally. But there are 6 people who said, yes, the dog does die. So got a little bit of an iffy thing on that. I do love, there's one comment here, though, that says, when a character says, bring out the dog, I was very upset. And then, because I saw it was a person, I was like, oh, thank God, it's just a man on a leash.
Which is its own little psychological rabbit hole of things to digest. But it's a very layered film. It's a film that I think I will probably have more advanced interpretations of if I see it again. It'll develop over time. Much like Possessor, I think it's got a lot of complex ideas that it feels like it's got something to say, but with multiple ways of considering it and thinking about how it's saying them. And we're talking about the idea of wealthy people doing whatever they want. We're talking about the idea of that being like a crutch when you have like no self esteem or no self confidence. Like all these ideas, a very character driven film. It's all very good. And if anything, I probably like it more after we've talked about it than I did even when the credits started to roll. So
for sure. I mean, for me, I think that it is like you said, it's a very layered film, but I think that what gets me the most is that as much as I was saying that I was waiting for it to do something more sci-fi, it wasn't like that was detrimental to the movie. By the time I realized that, no, this is, if I had to pick a single category for it, it's psychological thriller. Like, it is diving deep into this character's psyche and saying, what type of person are we going to end up as by the end of this movie? And I think it does a really great job of viewing this through the lens of self-worth and what consequences mean to people in general. Like, how does it shape you to know that you can't just do anything?
And it's a tragedy because, he could have went with his wife the first chance he got. He could have made lots of decisions at various points, but he kept giving in and being tempted by the tantalizing, like character who represents like all the desires that he has. And and again, it's not an accident that she keeps feeding his ego. It's not just that she's an attractive woman who's flirting with him. It's that, no, I love your work. I loved you as a writer.
Yeah,
you're good at everything. You're better than movies and Tommy Wiseau. You're that good.
Yeah.
So
this is how Tommy Wiseau and Neil Breen wake up every morning. They just have a little Mia Goth in their head saying like, "You did it. You're the best."
It's probably distressing to think that there actually is just like a delusional wife who's with them who is telling Neil Breen that he's a genius and that he's the best and that he's all these things. Wow. Okay. Well, there you go. Yeah. Easy episode for your first attempt, David. What are you rating Infinity Pool? And you can't rate it Infinity, even if that's
dang it
funny.
That's okay. I don't even know how to type that in on our little score sheet here. So, I mean, again, it's deeply layered. There's a lot going on with it. I liked everything it had to do. I don't think there's anything that I really would say is unnecessary. As you said towards the beginning, it's dense. Like everything you're seeing plays into something that comes out later. Nothing's done just as look at the shock factor. Except maybe penis exploding out of a vagina, but I haven't seen that, so I don't know if it is. So overall, I think right now, I'd say this one is probably an 8.5. I think I really like the themes it's playing with, and I'm always a sucker for like deeper, heady, like philosophical films of what does it mean as like the self or whatever. So
sure,
this was already right up my alley, but 8.5 sounds good to me.
Yeah, I'm in a very similar ballpark. It's funny, I think when the movie ended, I was probably just a flat 8, but I'm wondering if the conversation has sort of also got me up to the 8.5 at least, because it is a very rich film, it's got a lot going on, and I do think it's even better now that I've talked about it, so I think I'll also go to 8.5, but it's the sort of thing I could see even going up more with further viewings. This is the
sort of thing where if it manages to hit like a cultural zeitgeist or something and a lot more like think pieces are done, I could really see a lot more being explored than what we talked about here.
Like, we're idiots. I bet there's some real smart people who are going to deconstruct this into new avenues to view it through new lenses.
I can't wait for someone to tell me what the hell an id actually is.
Because I think it's important here is like, you've got this temptress character effectively in Mia Goth, and I think it's very important that, because I think it'd be a very easy thing to dismiss that, it's a bit sexist and she's the awful kid. I was like, no, but the wife's a good person and he's the idiot who keeps not listening to her and going with the sexy one. Like, not that the wife's not sexy, I don't mean that, I just mean from his perspective, he's tantalized.
It's the shiny new toy compared to old reliable.
So, this is all very much from his perspective. This is how much of a flawed psyche he has. It's not like every other character's viewed through his lens and has to be kind of taken that way.
Yep.
So, Yeah, well, okay, we've rated the movie, so it's time for the little bonus segment before we wrap up the show.
Hey!
Although, before we do the bonus section, I'll just tell you about patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. You can go over and support the show and all the podcasts we do with a little bit of money, and you get some bonus content every month. Me and David do 2 monthly shows on Patreon. We have extra reels at the $5 and up tier, which is where we review some of the worst movies of all time. Sometimes they're so bad they're good, which is the idea. It's the hope, anyway. And now that David's also on Ace, that will include occasionally sci-fi, so bad they might be good movies. So
whoa, glad to have that.
That's a thing. Also, monthly, for all the tiers, we do the Criterion Cut, which is a monthly review show where we talk about movies from the Criterion Collection. So it's the opposite of Extra Reels. It's hopefully the best of the best. So you can get that, plus other stuff for Screams After Midnight and more, over on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV. But anyway,
yes,
David has strategically decided not to tell me in advance what he's watched for his homework, so this is a surprise to me as it is to everyone else. David,
and
why
I
don't
will
you
never tell you?
Why don't you reveal to everyone which 80s sci-fi movie you watched from the Ace archive?
All right, so just to be clear, it's not always going to be 80s sci-fi. It's just for maybe like 6 months or so. But for this episode, I chose episode number 98, The Dead Zone, directed by David Cronenberg.
Very good. Here was me thinking you might pick Possessor, but oh well.
Is that 80s?
No, it's not. But
okay.
Look, gonna say, I'm just saying there was a good reason to do it. All right.
There was, and I did consider it, but in the end, this seemed a bit more up the alley. So anyway, Dead Zone. It is a movie where Christopher Walken, he finds out, or he gets into an accident, and when he awakes, he has psychic powers, and he uses those in a bunch of creative ways. It's based off of a Stephen King novel. And
father of joking, yes.
And I actually I really liked it. I think that I was a bit surprised going into it because it was a bit slower pace to start with, but dear Lord, by the end, it just goes off the rails, and I could never really predict where the movie was going to end up. And I think I kind of felt like it was a adaptational thing where the Stephen King book, didn't read it, don't know what's in it, but I felt like this movie had chapters. This movie had, here's the section of the book where he deals with this, and a lot had to be sort of cut out in order to get it down to just movie size. But by the time it really hits the third act, I think everything comes together in a really interesting way. The effects are good. I really enjoyed, one of the earliest things is that he sees a fire happening, and it's just incredible the way they make the fire effects work because he's literally inside of it. So yeah, overall, I'd say that movie is probably, for me, I'd give it a straight 7. I think it's really good.
What did I give it? Because you've got the list in front of you.
You gave it a 7.5.
Yeah, okay. That's fair enough. Yeah, I like Dead Zone when we did it. I think Walken's performance is very good. The ice, it's got a break. The pausing, and I can't do the voice, obviously, but...
I was going to say, as I listened to the review, because I did want to hear what you and Tara had to say, you explicitly started the episode with, I'm not going to do a Christopher Walken accent because I can't.
Yes, but this is the new era, baby. We're in the PT land. That's post Tara.
All right.
Works
for me.
Aye. There's DT, which is during Tara, and PT, which is post Tara.
All right.
All right. Those are the eras.
The epochs of Ace.
No, it's a good movie. It's all about, because the visions are all related to death in some way, so it's kind of him trying to intervene and no one believes him. So there's a lot of good thriller stuff there. I think the climax is one of the best parts of the movie, actually. I won't talk about what it is, but I remember enjoying a lot of the movie, but not necessarily being in love with it, and then the climax kind of, you know what, this kind of brought it together in a really cool way for me.
Yeah, that's what I was saying about the third act. I really think that it was just wow how it managed to get there. All
right, cool. All right, just 214 more to go, David. Very good.
All right.
So, not counting bonus episodes. So, that is the show. Obviously, we told you about Patreon, but if you can't do that, that's okay. Hit the like button on YouTube. It helps out a lot, and more people will find the show, so please do. Or rate the podcast on the iTunes or wherever you get podcasts from. The apps.
Spotify.
Yes. So do all that. But that is the show. So hopefully you'll enjoy the new era of the Atomic Cinema Experiment. and we will see you again next time, which I usually tell them what's coming next. I suppose I should do that. Since I can. We have it all written down. So,
it was our vote that just happened.
Oh, well, you're right. It is the vote, yeah. So every month on patreon.com/MailFuzzTV, our patrons, the voting tier and up, get to do a few votes. And one of them was for Ace, and the winner of the Cyberpunk/Dystopia vote was Upgrade. So we'll be looking at Lee Winnell's Upgrade next week. So check it out in advance if you want to, and join us for that. But that is the show, so thank you once again for watching or listening. We always appreciate it. Keep watching science fiction and computer ad salsa.